Nice.
And I'll tell you when it is officially started.
Yeah.
All right, now we're live.
We're
Okay.
live. We've been
Yes,
talking
we
about doing this
are.
for a while.
Dude, what is up, Jason? How are you, man?
Good, man. Good. Good. It's good to be here. You and I have been
So,
talking about doing this for a while now.
yes, we have been, and we've been like kind of touching base and stuff for a while, even before I had the group. So I'm glad
Yeah.
that we're able to get you on here and have a conversation and create some content, and so I can tap into some of that knowledge that you have,
Yeah,
this
man.
merger
And
and acquisition knowledge that we're about to be dropping on these folks.
it's also, nice to have a fellow Floridian here too.
Exactly, dude. We got to stick together.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so for everyone who is watching, what I'm gonna do right now is I'm just gonna read through his bio, so you can kind of get an understanding of his experience. Then we're gonna kind of break down exactly what we're gonna be going through, and then we'll just jump right in. So let me just go ahead and pull up your bio here. So I wanna make sure everyone's listening intently. Okay. All right. So Jason Godwin is a business broker, a merger and acquisition advisor, and a team leader at the Florida Business Exchange, which is a brokerage for mergers and acquisitions in the state of Florida. Jason owns two companies in the business services space. The first one is the Exit Strategy Group, which is an elite business brokerage and mergers and acquisitions team focused on the business services sector. And then LeadTool.ai, which is a customer acquisition and management software company focused on helping business owners simplify, automate, and grow their companies. So Jason has had the opportunity to work with over 200 companies and business owners around the country, from small startups to Shark Tank contestants to large e-commerce giants to companies listed on the Inc. 5000. And today we're going to be going over exactly how you can actually structure your business to maximize the amount of money that you can get when you go to sell, right? Or to even be able to have people who are interested in your business so that you can sell if you want
Right.
to, down the line.
Yeah,
And
have
so,
something worth selling.
yeah, exactly. So I guess, obviously you've worked with over 200 companies now, and there was something that just caught my eye here in this bio, and I want to just quickly touch on it before we jump into everything else. You said that you worked with a Shark Tank contestant. Can you speak about that for 1 second?
So I can't say who it was because non-disclosures, but we had a Shark
Okay.
Tank contestant that had reached out to us post Shark Tank. And one thing a lot of people don't know about that program is those deal cycles are very long because the sharks actually have some substantial due diligence they do after they make the deal. So they may shake hands on the television show, but now sometimes there's a 6 month to a 9 month runway of them
Mm.
investigating the information that's been placed in front of them, determining the actual valuation of the company performance, and then making sure they want to go through the deal. So
Oh,
yeah, no, it's not just what it
okay.
looks like on camera. So with that client, they had approached us because they actually didn't like the deal that the Sharks put in front, or the one shark put in front of him, and
Okay.
it was the one that has more of an attitude, and
Okay.
the deal kind of shifted before papers were signed. So they had asked us, wanted our opinion on that, and what we thought they should do going forward. And they were in a big capital raise phase, and they weren't really ready for market yet. So, we gave them a little bit of advice and helped them get the next step. And now they're actually, I that was 2.5, 3 years ago. And I remember recently seeing one of their Facebook ads. So I know that they're still out there. The product is live now. So
That's awesome, man. That's super awesome. And so in your business as a merger and acquisition advisor, kind of what does this process look like? Does someone come to you and they're saying, "Hey, I'm trying to sell," and do you help them find a buyer, or how exactly does that process work?
yeah, so the unfortunate thing is what typically happens is someone comes to us and say, "Hey, I want to sell yesterday. Let's make this happen." And then we have to start doing the investigation of the business and determine, okay, well, there's a lot of things that we could have done beforehand to make this more helpful, to increase your value, and to make the transaction easier. We also do advise companies on what steps to take in order to sell. But like when a client approaches us, or we procure a client, it's typically because they have either retirement in mind, or a life change, or some event has happened that has caused them to decide to exit their business. A lot of people don't realize you can sell a company just like you could sell a piece of commercial real estate. Actually, the returns are a lot higher on businesses for investing than they are for real estate. Typically, like right now, you go buy an apartment complex, you're going to net a 6 to 5% return. you can go invest in a business and you can make a 25 to 40% return very easily. And then you bring an SBA loan into that with cash on cash, you can make your down payment back in the first, 6 months of ownership. We've worked with guys who, they brought $200,000, $100,000 to the table, and we're making $400,000 to $500,000 within the first year off that, $100,000 investment.
Wow. Amazing. And so there's kind of like this notorious like quality of agencies that they're super hard to sell. I don't know if you can kind of speak to that.
When they're set up right, they're not. And I would say so speaking on agencies specifically, because I think SaaS and agencies are two separate issues.
Mhm.
But with agencies, what tends to happen is the owner becomes the hub and the team members become the spokes, right? So every decision in creative must go through and out of the owner of the company. So
Right.
whenever a buyer is looking to acquire that company, they're looking at churn. They want to know how long the clients are staying on. They want to know what percentage of the revenue each client makes up. Typically agencies that have less than 50 clients are going to have, at least a 2% customer concentration per client minimum, right?
Mhm.
So, that's a factor that comes into play. So buyers are always looking at risk and how they can offset risk. And typically the first way they do it is with price. So, right. So if you've got some risk factors like the owner being heavily involved with the business or customer concentration, they're going to offset that with price. And that price is going to be a lot lower than if you took the steps to build that company right from the get-go.
Yeah, because ultimately that investor is going to have to go in there and like pretty much almost rebuild the business. You have clients and you have some level of traction, but as soon as you're removed from the equation, like, it's not even going to function anymore. So,
Right.
it would make sense they would, maybe try to lowball you, give you a low offer specifically because they're going to have to go in there and actually turn it into a real business now.
Well, I'll share a quick story. This isn't an agency. This is a industrial company, but we had a client come to us via way of an attorney reference, and they had a previous deal on the table for, we'll say, 1.5 million.
Mhm.
Something got spooky at the very end of the deal. They didn't feel comfortable. They ended up not moving forward. They found another attorney to review the deal. The attorney said, "Hey, this doesn't look right. Let's call." They called us. We came in to, start doing our deep dive. And we had found that, I'll spare you all the details, but basically the sellers were leaving a ton of money on the table. So we advised them on what to do, what steps to take. The sellers took the advice. We refiled tax returns. We restructured some of the internals of the company, the leadership of the company. And 16 months later, we sold the company for $5 million.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Revenue only went up about 15%. So it wasn't sheerly that sales went up. It was just restructuring the company
Okay. Gotcha.
and fixing issues.
Now we're speaking about like, the agency model now,
Right.
but how sellable do you think that like a high level SaaS operation is? Let's say that you amass like a bunch of users and stuff like that. Do you think how easy would it be to go and sell that? And what type of multiples do you think that would be seeing?
So SaaS typically by nature is, very sticky. Clients, there's not a lot of churn rate if you have a good product. So businesses with low churn rates tend to go for a very high multiple. I've seen upwards of 10x EBITDA or
Mhm.
maybe 6x, seller discretionary earnings. But it's very determined on the hedge around the business compared to its competition and the stickiness of the client base. The challenge with high level SaaS for selling it is you don't own the product. So
Mhm.
it's just like having a FedEx route. FedEx, those are franchise agreements, and if you deviate from the agreement, they can pull the product. And you can no longer own your FedEx franchise. If you were to lose your rights as a high level agency, then your whole business disappears. So having diversity of revenue sources and having something that sets yourself apart from your competitors is probably the number one factor you can put into growing your agency. The second
Mhm.
is having a strong team. So you have more to sell than just your own relationships. But I think within the industry, I get messaged all the time for buyers looking for agencies to buy within this space. Those messages don't tend to go public, but there's people who are looking who would buy right now.
Mhm.
But they want to make sure that the owner is not the business, and that there is a team in place that's well qualified, and the clients have a very sticky history and they've been around for more than a few months. I don't want to go to a multiple on that, but I do know that there are plenty of buyers out there looking for that right now.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, obviously, when it comes to high level SaaS, its valuation is not going to be the same as a typical SaaS because they don't own the actual IP.
Right. It's
right.
White label. It's not there.
Exactly. And so, if you are running a high level SaaS, would you say that probably developing, additional software that bolts onto it and
Right.
actually extends the functionality of the offer, past what high level can do? Do you feel like that would probably be a good move?
Yeah, if you can. And also, I'm going to say this very cautiously. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an accountant. So this is just for entertainment purposes only. This is not education in any way or advice. But you can talk to an attorney about trademarking and copywriting, or trademarking, not copyright, trademarking, the use of a SaaS product that you don't own bolted onto another product. If what you have is unique and is not proprietary to someone else and no one has a trademark underneath it, you can file for a trademark. Like, for example, let's say if you found a way to combine Google, that's not a good one. Let's say you found a way to integrate two-way communication between Gmail and high level, right?
Okay. Sure.
You sold that would go for a very high multiple. We're talking probably 9-10 EBITDA. So if you made $100,000 a year profit, that business would sell for $1 million all day.
Okay, cool. So I want to, with that being said, I'd love to just jump straight into kind of like the different things that these buyers are looking at, or these investors are looking at when they're trying to determine the value of a company. And so, by the way, these different things that these investors are looking for, is the ultimate intention of structuring your business in that way is not even just to get an investor that's willing to pay you a bunch of money for an exit, right? What they're looking for, the things that they're trying to dial in on, are the indicators that you have actually a fully functional business.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so, just like what Jason said earlier, what ends up happening is that these agency owners end up really effectively, basically creating like a crazy job for themselves. And as soon as you remove them from the equation, the business is no longer a business. Okay.
Right.
And so, with that being said, if you want to like hop in straight to the top, let's do it.
Yeah. So I share with you, what are the key value drivers in a business document? This is kind of like a very brief summary of some of the information we share with sellers. We actually have to support this. I think it's a 27-page document that goes into more detail, but this is kind of the summary of that. And this is an order of importance in the deal structure. And to your point, the reason why buyers are looking at this is not just for the value of the company, but because of the health of the company and the ease of transitioning that business during a sale. So one of the sayings that I always share is the value of a business is determined by the hole left in that business when the seller exits. So if the seller exits and everything goes according to plan and the company barely notices, that business is worth a tremendous amount more than if once the seller goes on vacation, everything shuts down. If that's a measurement, if you want to be able to know if your company is worth a high multiple, is can you go on a multi-week vacation and nothing implodes and not check your email every 5 minutes? So like the first subject we'll talk about, in this is owner involvement, right? And I believe this is the most overlooked. Business owners tend to take a lot of pride in what they do in their business. They love to talk about their role and how much they've accomplished, and they love to talk about all their achievements. And I've seen this firsthand in meetings with buyers and sellers. We've had some very successful sellers that have, built companies that won awards, multi-million-dollar net revenues every year. and they get on a call with a buyer when we're doing the introduction, they start talking about how great they are. After the call, the first thing the buyer says, well, I'm not buying the seller. So like, that's not what we're
Right.
looking for. So what are the things to consider when you're framing your business around, the owner involvement piece, right? So, one of the questions we ask is, what tasks are solely the responsibility of the owner or the seller? What are you doing that no one else in your company can do? As a business owner, your one singular job above everything else is to try to put yourself out of a job. You want to make sure you're systematizing your business and growing your team in a way that you don't have a job to do. You're constantly replacing yourself. Because before you can make any of the other changes that are listed in this document or any pieces we put out later, if you don't have the time margin to do them, you're going to fail. So that's why this is first, is you have to start creating a time margin for yourself and start offloading those tasks that only you can do in your company. Second is, what skills or talents does the owner possess that the team does not? What are the things, again, that have to pass through your desk that no one else in your company can do?
I want to just pause you just for 1 second. I just got a message like from my from one of my family members. So I actually have to wrap this up in about 13 minutes. So let's go through the expedited
Yeah,
version
so we'll
of
go
this.
expedited. Okay, so I think the rest of that subject can be summarized with, as the owner of the business, your main focus should be on building your team and developing your systems in a way that the business can function without your presence in the company. That is the number one factor that's going to create value in your company.
And I think that one of the main reasons for that is because when an investor is looking to purchase your company, they're not looking to buy a job for themselves, right?
No.
They're looking to have an asset, right? So what these investors are doing is they're not looking at these businesses like, jobs that they want to go do. They're looking at them like they're cash flowing assets that they can buy, like a rental real estate property or these other different types of asset classes. Right. And so the more passively they can manage the business, right, the better.
Right. Or the easier they can put an operator into the company to run it for them,
Right.
because they may be bolting onto existing operation.
Yeah.
So like, if anybody wants to work on this, I have a time and motion study document we use with owners that basically you take this document, it's either in a PDF form or Google Sheets form, you track everything you do all day, and you start making a list of what you can delegate and what is not crucial to operation of the business, and start passing this stuff off first.
Yes. Okay, cool. Let's go to the next one.
Yeah, next one. So this is the hardest one of all in the list. This is team structure and leadership within the company. This is the most time consuming and difficult part of the whole business structure, is finding the quality people and the right people who can fill all the roles in the company in the right time. The book Traction talks about this. It's right people, right role, right attitude. So building that team. So we always like to ask, when was the last time you as the owner of your company took a vacation? When I mean by vacation, like you were able to actually close your laptop, put your phone on Do Not Disturb, and go sit on a beach somewhere and drink Mai Tais and be left alone. Like, when was the last time that happened for more than a week or two? That's a measurement of like what your exit will look like when you sell the company. Another question we like to ask is, how well does the team make decisions outside of the owner, and how many decisions need to go directly through the owner? You start making a list of all the things that your team has to ask you on a weekly basis. Those are the areas that the team has not been trained effectively on, and the areas that maybe you need to look at documenting SOPs, maybe making Loom videos for. You'll see repetitive, especially if you go, search your email history, you'll see things that come up all the time. Those are what you need to focus on training your team on, because then time begets time. You start building those time margins, and now all of a sudden your company starts growing right underneath you.
Right.
Yeah. And additionally,
I want to add one more thing, and like specifically about like the question in regards to how autonomous your like different team members are, right? if they have to run everything past you, then like that is actually a hindrance to the speed of reaction of your company to any kind of new circumstance that they find themselves within.
Right.
Right. And that is actually what you have to do when you have low quality talent. Right. But if you have high quality talent, then you want to give them a certain level of autonomy, for the reasons of, obviously, speed, as well as obviously valuation.
Right. And you can also have high quality talent that doesn't have good leadership. Like we ran into situations with our growth this year where I realized I didn't put the right measures in place. And I've got talented people that are standing around like, all right, Jason, what do I do next? And I'm like, oh, wow. Like, okay, I'm not immune to this either. So we learned some things this year, and we had to build some back end, support systems for like SOPs and Loom videos saved inside of Asana task and whatnot, so that our team can go back to them and execute on those effectively. And that goes back into, on the team structure side is building those SOPs, building those plans, building those roles. Like within our company, I have an operations manager. She kicks ass. She has built identified roles for every role inside the company, who that's assigned to, who's the backup for that. And then all the SOPs for those roles are all built out. And that way we can onboard someone within 2 weeks and they're operating as if they've been here months.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that actually touches on another one of these, like one of the next, or one of the following kind of clusters of things that you should be looking at, which is having defined systems and processes, right?
Right. And let me touch on this real quick too, because I want to add some value for the agency owners in here who are in the process of growing your business. These are all selling points you can use to sell your software and your services to other business owners. You can sell, hey, we have a course builder so you can host your SOPs internally for your company. We have an automation system so that we can take work off your plate as the owner. We have task delegation systems so you can start delegating tasks to your team, right? You have automation so you have repeatability. So every time this one thing comes in, you don't have to train your team on it every time. Those are tools you can put in your tool belt as SaaS owners and agency owners to sell your clients, because every business owner faces these problems. This is not just one industry. I mean, every industry has these same problems.
And so one thing I just wanted to say here, and you feel free to, if you don't want to do this, that's fine. I was just going to say that I have about seven minutes until I have to leave. But if you felt like that was too cramped and you wanted to take more time to go through this list, I could always make you the host, and then you could continue on and then just end it. Either way, it's cool.
I mean, I think the thought behind it's more important. Okay. But the other ones are pretty simple. We can just skim through them really quickly. Like,
all right, let's do it.
Yeah. So, the third one on this list is client mix and revenue. One thing we see with a lot of agency consulting type business service companies is they will have customer concentration. You may have 20 clients, but one of your clients makes up 30-40% of your revenue because they're paying, $5,000-$6,000 a month retainer. So having a mix of your revenue so that your clients are more diverse and you can minimize the individual percentages per client. Same thing with revenue, right? So having a diverse amount of revenue so that if one service were to go away because of a supplier disappeared, then you're not out of business. And that's the only downside with high level is if high level goes away, they won't. But for some reason, if they ever decided to get rid of the white label function, a lot of us are out of that revenue source.
Right.
So the other thing too about that is the saying riches are in niches. A lot of times niching down within an industry will bring you more value too, because people want to acquire a useful tool, not a tool that can be used for any task, right? It's like that weird little multi-tool hammer wrench thing you can go get at the dollar store versus like a precision tool that's designed for a specific purpose. Which one's worth more?
So, yeah, absolutely.
The next category would be systems and processes. I feel like we don't have to go over this much, but it's very crucial to the growth of your company that you systematize your business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I feel like this is a subject that's been beaten to death, but for some reason people don't do it. It's probably because it's hard to make a priority because you're not doing the other things well, so you have no time. But
Yeah, I mean, that is the extremely difficult aspect of being an entrepreneur when you are building something from the ground up and you have nobody else who's working with you, is that you have to wear all these hats at the same time. And then you also have to start, bringing employees on, and you have to create some level of a codified process for them to follow, right? And also create a system for delivering the information that they need to know in order to follow these processes.
right.
And
So
so
like
it's another hat that you need to wear.
we can summarize this with one sentence. The key to business strategy is delaying gratification. So as your business grows, if your lifestyle grows, there's a problem. Your target should be growing your business so you can work less in it and hire more people, so you can build more systems, so you can hire more people, so you can build more systems, so you can get more revenue, so you can hire more people. That's the equation. If you're looking at this because you want the Lambo, you're going to lose, and someone smarter than you is going to beat you every time. Sorry, it's the way. That's the facts of life. So if you can delay that
Yeah.
gratification for as long as possible, that's how you win.
Yeah, I think I forget who it was who said this, but it's like the person who can spend the most amount of money on acquiring a new customer, right, is going to be the person who wins.
100%.
And so if you're taking like all the cream off the top, spending it on your lifestyle, then you might be putting yourself in a vulnerable position to a competition who's not doing that.
And then again, that self-explanatory. It's also selling point. You can sell your services to your clients. I don't think we need to, for essence of time, we can come back to that later. The last one is
By the way, I just got a message and the crisis has been averted, so we can continue to our regular time. Sorry,
Okay.
Sorry for all this mix up.
Well, systems and processes. One thing I want to speak to is every single, and I'm surprised how many people don't do this. Every single agency and SaaS company, you need a project management software. You need Monday.com, you need Asana, you need something like that. If you're not using it, you're wrong.
At what point in the business do you think that it's important for someone to
Yesterday.
yesterday? You think that as soon as somebody starts, they should be
Before you have your first client,
developing the habit. Yeah.
Before you have I have friends that have wives that are stay-at-home moms that I have preached the gospel of Asana to, and they've started using Asana to manage their household.
Yes. Yeah.
I preach this to. I mean, I've been on this train for like 3 years now.
Dude, I've seen it too. I've had like girlfriends who use Trello for freaking everything.
Yeah, exactly. Asana is the more expensive one. Monday.com is less. And honestly, knowing both, I may have gone the Monday.com route, but we're already too deep into Asana to leave. I know this price per seat, Monday.com is cheaper. But you have to do this to like right now. Like if you're not using a project management software, you're not templating what you're doing, you're already losing. Like there's no repeatability in your business. So you can't scale, right? There's only, I don't know who said this. I'm gonna steal it. I'm gonna claim it as mine.
All right.
There's only 2 ways to scale a company. That's technology and people. That's it. So you have to leverage those 2 things to grow at the fastest rate you can. Because if you're not, your competitors are.
And so when it comes to like business strategy for somebody who's like first starting out, what do you recommend that they try to get to their first employee as fast as possible? And like, even if that's like a risk, or should they, grow it by themselves up to that certain point where it's, less risky and they're just doing everything now, and then bring on a virtual assistant or some kind of employee? There's
another question we have to ask, right? So we have a sliding dial, right? Mm-hmm. On this side is time and this side is money. Where do you land in that dial? If you have a job that produces a steady income and you can invest, you're not going to get your time back. You need to build a team now. But if you're in a stage where you have a job, but it doesn't produce enough income and you have more time, then, you can build this yourself. But that you have to judge that situation for yourself. Because my next question would be, okay, so like, how much do you make versus how much capital do you have left over at the end of the month? If you have an extra $1,000 a month left over, that's outside of paying your bills and savings, you can afford to find a VA to help you with this. But I would also caution you to get your SOPs in line first, because as soon as you bring them on, like the train has left the station, and if you're not ready for that, you're going to spend money with them just twiddling their thumbs and waiting, or they're going to leave you. And now you got to find another one because you didn't have to work for them. So if you want to attract the right talent, you have to present yourself differently than the majority of agency owners. And we get this all the time. We'll hire someone like, oh man, you guys are so organized. Like, I've never worked with an agency this organized. You guys have plans in place, like everything's so clear. But there's also an expectation of performance with that. Like, if we're going to lay all this out, then, they've got to perform too. So, and that's something for VAs and overseas talent, is you have to realize how valuable you are to this industry and market yourself in such a way that you are an asset to these business owners who want to grow their companies. So you need to make sure that you're not accepting less as far as lack of clarity, lack of direction, because there are plenty of business owners that need your services. You just have to do a good job marketing yourself.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, having reliable people on your team is like, dude, it is one of the most important things in like starting and scaling a business, is having people that you can actually rely on.
Yeah. And that's another thing too, for agency owners, SaaS owners. You need to praise your people and tell them they're doing a good job if they're doing a good job. Because I'm going to tell you right now, we use Time Doctor. It's the simplest thing we do to track time.
Yep.
And every single one of my people, my highest level American employee down to new hires, are getting DMs every day, just like they're a girl on Snapchat. Hey, you want a job? You want a job? Every single one is. So you need to be a business owner worth working for, because they are
interesting.
They are
interesting
talking to
idea.
people.
Interesting. Okay. I actually wasn't aware that that they were getting DMs like that. That's kind of news to me.
We were trying to. This was a previous employee. We're trying to find something out, and because I've seen this actually with multiple previous employees, but we see a screenshot of their Facebook inbox, and it's just like DM of agency owners like reaching out. And I know there's people that my employees have told me, oh, so-and-so inside the groups reach out to me. I'm like, it's cool. You give them a raise and tell them they're doing a great job, but they are. And you be the best business owner you can and be the best leader and treat them fairly and treat them, with kindness and respect, and, pay them on time, do what you say you're going to do, and you'll keep good talent. If not, they're going to leave you.
Absolutely. And so how do you, like, as you are bringing people on, how do you have like any advice around creating a culture where VAs do feel like they want to stay with you? Obviously, doing the best you can to praise them and stuff like that. Are there any other types of things that you recommend to actually to create that culture?
Humility. Americans have a big problem with that. Europeans probably do too. I don't know that many Europeans, but I know Americans specifically have a problem with humility. Mm-hmm. It's I think clear communication, and this is probably the thing. If anyone in this group knows me, you all know I'm terrible at communication. I constantly have like 30 or 40 unread text messages and 100, 200 unread Facebook messages at a time. So I'm the worst at this, but I have people on my team who are really good at it. And so I delegate to them, hey, can you make sure you're staying in touch with this person? Because I'm in meetings all day. I'm not going to be able to. So like my ops manager, she is really good about every morning, every afternoon, like, okay, hey, where are we at with this? What's next? And also that was kind of rabbit hole for a second, but I would say the biggest thing is give them buy-in. Like when you have a project, ask them like, hey, how would you do this? Like, what are your thoughts? Like what's your creative genius say here in this space? Because the one thing is like, if a lot of overseas employees don't get the opportunity to express themselves, right? And some of them are really talented.
That's true.
And I've had this idea of what road I wanted to go down, and I'm like dead set, this is how we do this. And then, someone's like, hey, can I just share this? And I'm like, all right, your idea is way better than mine. Let's do that. Because that's the kind of people I want on
Absolutely.
my team. I want people that are smarter than me. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room.
Yeah, that was like in my experience, I one of the things that I did when I was running like this ops team for this agency that I was working with is um, I really got everyone that was on the team to buy in because my one of my number one goals was trying to help them develop more skills, right? With the idea is that as you develop more skills, we're going to be able to pay you more. And so I try to build like this learning organization where I was purposely, giving them access to Udemy courses to teach them things like project management or Lean Six Sigma, right? And so they actually really appreciated that. And so as a result, they were just gobbling up all this information, which then got them closer to where, I was, and then we could start having conversations and collaborating when it came to, some hard problems that we needed to solve. So I think
Yeah.
that kind of really investing, more than just, you know, paying the money, right? But also time and dedicated effort to trying to help them skill up is also like another thing that you can do to really to really raise the cultural bar in your business.
The measurement of your success as a leader is how well your team is doing in their personal life. If your people are not winning on all levels, then you're failing them as a leader, like 100%. If your people are stressing about money, if they're stressing about things in their personal life that are avoidable by you just communicating more clearly and by setting clear expectations, like you failed them. One of the things we do when we onboard someone, doesn't matter what role they're coming in for, doesn't matter if they're going to make 100K a year, if they're going to make, $8 an hour. When I give them an offer letter, it's laid out like, okay, so here's where you're starting, but here's the roadmap for us to get to this level, because I want everyone around me to be the highest paid in the industry. Because that's a win for me. That means I'm a badass leader if I can do that. If I can build a team that I can afford to pay more
Absolutely.
than everyone else, I'm winning. And that
Yeah,
because
and they definitely won't leave you. You know what I'm
not
saying?
just that, but like they're outside of money, their lives are better personally.
Yeah.
So like, because it's not just about the money. Like if that's your legacy, that's an empty, sorry legacy. But if you can change lives by making people's lives better, by just being a better leader, like that will precede your reputation further than you can think.
Absolutely. And so when you say, kind of like outlining what that vision for the future looks like within the contract, I think that's a great idea, right? Letting
Yeah.
them see like the larger picture that's kind of at play.
Yeah. Yeah. And also we're very transparent on like where things are at in the organization. We'll tell them, okay, so here's where we're at, here's our goals. They're part of the team meetings, and they can submit, their buy-in, their thoughts. I want every person in the organization to be a leader, right? So it doesn't matter if they're the person who started yesterday. I'm gonna ask them in a meeting, like, what are your thoughts? Like, how would you do this if you had the choice? Because I want
Yeah.
to make sure that I'm exploring every option to find the smartest person in the room.
Yeah, and this really goes back to the idea to like to team structure and leadership, and also trying to structure the team communication in a way so that the plans and the goals and the mission of the company are clearly communicated to all people involved, right? So you've mentioned, team meetings as being a good way of doing that. Do you have any other recommendations for how you can effectively communicate and make sure that everyone's on the same page when it comes to the vision for the company?
So like I've stole a lot of the EOS, employee operating system plan from Traction.
Mhm.
So we employ that. We have an L10 meeting once a week. That's basically, it's a very templatized meeting of like, we go through in this order, the issues, action items, long-term goals every week. We use one channel of communication for task and one channel for like when we need to get someone's attention. So we're not using multiple channels of communication. That way everything is very clear. Everything has like an SOP saved in a Google Drive or inside the course tool inside of GHL. So like everyone knows the resources to go to get the tools they need to do the job. Everything's laid out inside of Asana. All the communications laid out inside of Asana. All the follow-up review requests, it's all laid out in Asana. So that way, because you can message just like you could in Slack inside of Asana. And that way, all of that communication is in one spot. So we need to go look for something, we know where it is. Right. And then they're like, my company is structured where I will come to work and my employees will tell me what I need to do that day, because I've given them that autonomy that if I'm in meetings and I'm dealing with clients, I may not know all the operational situations in the company. So they have the responsibility of making sure I'm up to speed and letting me know what's going on and letting me know what I need to be aware of and what, hey, this is urgent. You have to act on this right now. Or, hey, we have to shift priorities because this happened, that happened. Now this needs to be done next. And there's some days I'm the ones making that call too, but it just depends on, what's going on that day.
I'm curious. Obviously, we've spoken about the importance of autonomy. I think the way that Mark Cuban said that he does it is that he said that when somebody first gets started, he's like on top of them, and then there's like after a while there's a certain level of trust that's developed. At that point, there's autonomy that's given. Do you have any recommendations when it comes to giving people autonomy? Do you just say, hey, they come in, you give them all the docs and all the information they need, and you say, you got it from here? Or like, what kind of process do you have? Is there any kind of step-by-step process through which they actually have to earn that level of freedom and autonomy?
Well, so I would say it starts the hiring process, not the onboarding process. So I won't share all of our secrets because I do need to keep some stuff to myself.
That's
But
fine.
Long story short, we put a lot of barriers in place for people to come work for us. And if they can't jump through all those hoops and follow the instructions, and we hide little things in there to determine if they did every single instruction to the T, then they can't work for us. It's not that they're bad people. It's just our speed and our level of detail, because we're dealing with clients who do 20, 30, $40 million a year in revenue. Like, there can be no mistakes. So we need to make sure that they can read very carefully. They have a very good understanding of English language, and there are no mistakes. So then when we start the process of onboarding, like, they're switched on. The other thing is, like, you just need to pay people more too. Like, if you're trying to look for the cheapest employee, well, it's going to cost you double than just paying someone more. That's what we learned. Like, I tried that.
Yeah, I've heard that same exact thing. In fact, I think I read that there was data that was collected on this where it's like and for every single bad hire, it's like 2 to 4 times their actual annual cost having to replace them, with all the time that's been wasted.
We have a long form document, I wrote this 6-part email that was on like profit versus value. We did this whole thing on hiring, and the data does show that employee retention through hiring at a higher level is way more cost effective than hiring at a lower level and lower salaries. So
do you recommend hiring people who are foreign, or do you feel like the best employees tend to be from the US?
It depends what the role is too. Like, for GHL implementation, honestly, I would say that the Americans who are the best at it are not looking for a job. They own something.
They're usually,
They're like, they're doing their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I think honestly, and I've seen plenty of overseas agency owners do great. I think sometimes there's kind of a barrier because of that, nation of origin sometimes. So I think if they were American with their skill set, they would do way better than a lot of Americans because they're better at it than, they have more time invested.
Right.
But, like, it depends on the role. Like, if I'm going to hire a salesperson, I need someone who is predominantly accent neutral, just because of the level of client. Like, we are, B2B high-end clients. So it depends on who, what you're doing, right? There's some people that, some industries that don't require that. It's more about volume. And if you can hire 3 people to do more calling for the same budget, then you're going to get better results. It just depends.
Yeah.
I would say this though. The most important thing is communication. If you cannot understand each other, as far as
that is a major issue.
Yeah. If you give complex instructions and it's not clear, then that's going to cost you way more money than paying someone who maybe $2 an hour more who you can sit down and have a Zoom with, and like you are on the same exact page, and then they can challenge you in your ideas. Like, I've got one guy who works for me. I love him. He all the time's like, Jason, I don't know if I would do that. And then he submits an idea. I'm like, okay, you win. We'll do that.
Hey, yeah, that's great. One more. It sounds like you have one person who's going to make it easier for you to take a step back and sell your business.
Yeah.
Let's see. So there was something that we kind of skip past, obviously, because there was like the fear of these time restraints, and so there are a few things under the client and revenue mix that I would really like to discuss with you. So, one of the first things on there is the idea of customer concentration, and so I'd love it if you could kind of speak about that, and actually the following, the second bullet point as well, because they kind of tie together, and why investors are looking at that when they're evaluating a company.
Yeah, so customer concentration, right? That represents what percentage of your total revenue does each customer make up. Typically, anything above 10% starts throwing alarm bells off. So if you have 10 clients, then every one of them is 10%. Like I looked at earlier this year, I was looking at doing an acquisition myself, or looking at buying an agency. And we looked at 3 in the United States. All were around 50 to 60 clients. All of them, the average LTV was $5,000 a month in the retainer, but they would always have this concentration of like 10 clients that made up 50% of the revenue. Like all of a sudden, like this client, 20,000, 30,000, 10,000 a month, but then you have a bunch of these that are like $2,500, $1,000 a month clients. So that customer concentration represents a risk, because if one of those clients leaves, you're now below your operational threshold. If your business is operating at a 15% margin, which is what most large agencies operate at. So if you're doing, 2 million in gross, you're making 15% of that in EBITDA. Mm-hmm. So if one client goes and that's 10% of your gross, your cost base is the same, because you don't want to lose your talent, because you can't give them back. Your software stack costs are not changing. All your carrying costs aren't going anywhere, because it's a very fixed price industry. So you're kind of stuck. So that's why it's such an issue.
So you think that, when a buyer is looking at an agency or at any business, right? I guess it's more than just an agency. Just to reiterate what you just said, the reason why they don't want to see or specifically, they don't want to see that a single client, if that client leaves, that's like all of your actual profit margins, right? They want to make sure that, if the top 1 or 2 leave, they want to make sure that you still have a business, right? So is there any advice that you can give to help avoid that? Is that just an acquisition problem? What do you say?
So I would say in your acquisition, you need to start mixing your offers up, right? So like, without giving too much away, one of the things we do is we'll rotate. We'll sell something for a few weeks, and then we're going to move our focus to something else, so that our mix of services is very diverse. And then our mix of revenues is diverse too, but we kind of have like a target LTV in mind, what we want a customer to be worth. We really don't want we don't want a customer who's going to suck up, because this other thing is the resource side too. If you have one client who makes up, say, 30% of your revenue, they're probably also sucking up 30% of your resources too. Like that's the client that as soon as the phone rings and they say, you know what, there's this thing on my website I really don't like, and I think that team and I talked and we need to change that. Well, now you have this like scope creep, because now you're just gonna go change it because you're like, oh God, I don't want to lose this client.
Interesting. Yeah. That's so true.
We just full transparency, we just lost one of those clients. We had a client that like my team was like, one of my guys pretty much was working full time, and I was losing money on this client because they had a way they want to do things, and I went against my own judgment, and I let them drive the bus because they were the pathway to even more larger clients. And we just like kind of let them drive the bus on that. And the next thing you know, like it was just like, we got to cut ties. This isn't working. Because like, it just scope kept creeping, right? It's like, next thing you know, we weren't supposed to be doing Google Tag Manager, but now we are. We're not supposed to be setting up analytics, but now we are. That wasn't in the contract. We're not
Yeah.
supposed to be trying to convert, connect two APIs that don't want to work together because you want to use your fancy software we told you sucks. But because I got greedy, now I'm eating crow, and I lost money to that client 2 months in a row.
Yeah, so over relying on a number of clients actually compromises the other aspects of your business, right?
Oh yeah, like
Because
we had
because
initiatives we want to
if
rely
they
on.
have
We
that
couldn't.
power, right? If without them you don't have a business anymore, then like you really don't have the ground to stand on to enforce the boundaries of the offer and the scope. You know what I'm
No.
saying? So one of the biggest things needs to be getting out of that position. Now, you had obviously when it comes to, and let's bring it back into like the an example of an agency. One of the big appeals of an agency selling SaaS is that, hey, even if they stop the agency services, we're still making money with them, with these with like a SaaS offer. And so, you said that you were kind of rotating through these offers. I was wondering if that's for redundancy reasons, or like, what exactly, how that actually ties back into this risk
Well,
management.
it's like, well, so you have multiple factors there, right? You have you can, if you run an offer for a while, and this is something to think about in marketing in general, right? You have a cold traffic audience you're running that offer on.
Hmm.
If you're getting a high open rate, they've seen your offer. Now you're just dripping to them. The ones that are going to convert on the front end have converted in the first few weeks. Now you're just in the people who are either too busy, they're indecisive, they don't have the money, they love to have it happen, or they're not interested. So the best thing for you to do is just drip all that and then move on to the next cold traffic audience, sell them something different. Because then you're going to
Really
have 5 to 6% convert, maybe 10% if you're lucky. And then you just, move on over the next thing and let your drip campaigns do the work for you.
interesting. And so that's actually a very different approach from some of the different people that I've listened to. Like, what's some of the people like Alex
I
Hermosi, for
have no
instance.
course to sell.
Yeah, exactly. What Alex Hermosi says in this particular example is like you probably want to stick to one product and like just try to sell that as hard as you can. What you're saying here is that you will, like rotate through these different offers to these different products, because there is like, you know, that only like 1% or whatever who are actually just going to buy it immediately, instead of like
Well,
doubling down and waiting up for like a whole cycle for some of these longer term guys.
Hermosi says that, but he doesn't do it. He owns 4 companies. They all do different things.
Yeah, it's just at different scales.
Yeah.
Do you feel like do you feel like this rotating offers scheme is something that you'd recommend for somebody who's starting out? Or
Well, we're
do you feel
talking
like
about not starting out, no, but well, yes and no. Like, think of it this way. You're not going and you're not selling a hot dog and then the next day selling waffles, right?
Mhm.
You're selling things that are in parallel verticals. So an example would be
Okay.
we may do a 2-week campaign focusing on SaaS, and then we may do a 2-week campaign focused on like local SEO. And in that, we're now upselling the clients who have SaaS into local SEO, but now we're targeting another audience and another revenue stream. But they're parallel because we're using the same people, same talent, same skills, same resources. So it's in the same vertical. And then
Interesting.
we may
Yeah.
run something on pushing Google Ads. And we may just try to find like we only want a handful of Google Ads clients, because if you're going to onboard a Google Ads client, like that's pain in the ass. You have to fix whatever agency that they worked with before messed up, because I've yet to see an agency do it right. Fix all their conversion tracking, fix their website, because that's going to be atrocious too. So you're looking at like, you can only onboard 5 of those a month unless you're Superman.
Right.
So at that point now, you can then start building case studies and success stories to now start dripping to your clients who you onboarded SaaS to. So if you start running this pattern now, you have more content to share with those clients.
Now, another thing that you actually mentioned in the client revenue mix is it says, does one particular product or service make up a large portion of the company's revenue? If so, are there multiple suppliers to acquire this product from? I'm guessing like you're asking that question for as like to gauge the level of risk, right? Like
Right.
what happens if there's a supplier that ends up like, bouncing and canceling a contract or something, you still want to be able to have a business that's moving forward.
I'll give you an example. During COVID, we had a company we were working with that imported scooters and cheap motorcycles from China. They had 5 or 6 brands, but one supplier. Well, when that one supplier all of a sudden had all their shipping restricted, they started saying, well, okay, so now we're going to basically give our product to the highest bidder. And they had a contract with that supplier, and they never went and looked for other suppliers. So now the price of shipping containers went from $2,500 a container to $4,500 to $7,500 to $10,000 to $15,000. I think they peaked around, I could be wrong, but I mean, we were seeing prices around $27,000 a container. So now you have a product that had a 30% margin you can get from one supplier. They jacked the price up on you, and your shipping cost 10x in 1 year, and you had no backup plan.
Man, that is shitty.
Yeah, but it's just like, because they got greedy and lazy, they never thought about, let's find other suppliers because we want to make sure we have a backup plan to have a parachute.
Yeah, and I think that both of these, like, topics that we just discussed have to do with creating redundancy in your business and having, backup plans, not over relying on one party, right? Not over relying on one client, not over relying on one supplier, because as soon as you put yourself in a position where the success of your business is subject to your relationship with X supplier, your relationship with X client, then they pretty much control you, and there's nothing that you can do about it. You have to appease them, right? Or X supplier pulls this stuff, now they're going to jack up the price, the price for the product and all this other stuff because you don't have any other options. What are you going to do?
It's like, look at the chip issue with cars, right? Because we got greedy as Americans, and all the shareholders had to make that extra, 2% profit. We have a centralized source for chips, right, out of Taiwan. Well,
serious risk. Oh my God.
Now it's a national security issue, because now China is threatening Taiwan because they want chips. They want to control the market. And then, Ford's got, I think, 120, 150,000 cars sitting there that are moduleless because they can't sell because they have no computers. And that's better than it was a few months ago. But it's like, there's no redundancy because of greed. And half the time you look at redundancy is sacrificed for greed and profit. In the long term, though, when you look at if you're thinking in years and not days, that equation doesn't equal. Redundancy then equals more profit over time, because something bad is going to happen to your company eventually. It's just a matter of when.
Exactly. And that's something that I've definitely realized, personally recently as well. Because just by nature of like the actual chaos of the market, right? Things that you're going to assume on are going to change. You got to find out, hey, where right now in my business, like, what assumptions am I making that when it comes to, a certain variable remaining the same? Let me locate those and let's see how I can actually, manage that risk. Because if that variable changes, then I know that this whole thing starts to dissolve. So I think that's super important. Now, so I'm going to recap everything that we've gone through so far, and then we'll go all the way down to documentation, because I feel like we've covered everything. Well. So we've talked about owner involvement. We've talked about team structure and leadership when it comes to, making sure that your employees and your team members are autonomous. But also making sure that that your leadership has clear guidelines and that you have a clear leadership plan. Make sure that you have SOPs and systems for the team to actually utilize. Making sure the goals, missions, and plans are clearly communicated. Then we talked about client and revenue mix, discussing the different risks that over relying on one client or a handful of clients can pose to you. Same thing with suppliers. And then we also talked about different systems and processes. We talked about the fact that there are only 2 ways to scale companies through people and technology. And then we talked some more about kind of recording processes and making sure that is accessible by the team, and that is actually implemented at the level of an onboarding system for all of your employees. And so let's go ahead and jump into this documentation aspect. So I'll just let you go ahead and jump right in.
So This is something we see in more small local companies and service companies than we do in larger corporations work. So like our client size, we may 1 week work with a client who, e-commerce giant does 45 million a year in sales, right?
Hmm.
And then we get a call from a local restaurant that, has 10 employees and the owner makes, 100K a year. So totally, wide spectrum, but the smaller the business, typically the more unorganized the financials are. And it comes down to, when you're going to sell a company, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. If I'm selling you a piece of real estate, I can drive by it, we can walk in it, we can touch it, see it and feel it, right? If
Yep.
I'm selling you a company, I'm telling you about it, because you cannot necessarily touch, see, and feel the entire company. You're buying goodwill, you're buying a brand, you're buying a reputation. So that needs to be articulated in the financials to be provable, right? So we see this predominantly in, say, industries like gas stations, liquor stores, restaurants, businesses with a lot of cash, laundromats. The owner says, well, the revenue on the books is not as good, but I'm making this much money. I'm like, that's great. We have a saying, you can only steal once, you can't steal twice. You stole from the IRS, you can't now go prove that to a buyer. And again,
Yep.
I'm a libertarian. I don't care what you do with your taxes. I'm just telling you the fact.
Yep.
If you want to sell that business, you're going to have to be able to prove the revenues and show those in provable financials. We had a guy a few years ago. He's a great guy. I've actually sold multiple companies for him and multiple pieces of real estate, but he owned a liquor store. And he goes, oh yeah, I have my own bookkeeping system. So he goes back and he like bangs on his desk, and this like little like compartment pops down and this notebook comes out. And this notebook had, like, every single day there was a piece of paper, and taped on one side was the register from the POS system, and the other side was the cash only register.
Oh my God.
Yeah, this business, no joke, he did probably around 350,000 in net revenue on 1.8 million in sales in liquor and tobacco products. And I'm like, we just now narrowed our buyer pool down from like this to this, because all of my buyers who were going to pay cash because they're really qualified are not going to put up with this nonsense. And now if you got the ones who want a deal and they're going to negotiate with you, this pool is now that big.
Exactly.
We sold the company that it wasn't as much I could have got for it if he had done the right things. But other example with that company, we sold for 5 million. We had found revenue discrepancies in their financials where they had underreported, they had double reported labor in some categories. And I won't bore you with accounting practices, but basically
Yeah, sure.
their CPA sucked. So they were
Yeah.
making mistakes, and we found it. And once they corrected, they had to pay more in taxes, but they ended up paying like 300 grand in taxes for that fix. But then they sold the company and they made an extra $4 million. And they
Gotcha.
applied for the employee retention tax credit, which was like 200 grand. So they pay 100 grand in taxes, because we timed it during COVID. So we worked out, we got that, employee retention tax credit. So that's another piece of advice. Not all attorneys and accountants are created equally. If you want to get a business, you want to start a business, you need a qualified accountant or attorney on your team that you can pick up the phone and they're going to give you an answer on something, because that's going to save you more trouble than you realize down the road. It's only a matter of time. If you're in business long enough, you will get sued eventually. We had a conversation on the high level. This goes in operational documents as well. So that's why I'm going down this rabbit hole. In the main high level group, I think 2 days ago, this one guy asked a question about going to regulated industry, like something with financial advisors and dealing with, the other regulated industries. And I piped in and said, if you are not planning to have an attorney on retainer, do not go into regulated industry, because it is only a matter of time before Big Daddy government slaps you on the wrist because you didn't follow the right rules in advertising.
Yep.
So, you got to have your operational documents in check. If you have partners, you have to have some type of operational documents to determine how that company will be operated in the event that you do not agree with your partner at some point, which is inevitable. We see that more times than not. And also your buyers are looking for systematized businesses. And if you don't have like good documentation on your hiring processes, on your onboarding and training processes, on your legal processes, if you handle this type of any type of legal problems, like the cost it takes to generate those documents is far exceeded by the value they generate for your company long term.
Gotcha. Amazing, man. Is there anything else that you feel like we should cover? Any other tips that you may have for anybody who may be watching or who will be watching?
Don't be afraid to ask questions. Like if anyone is in business and you're looking for some advice, like don't hesitate to reach out. I love helping people. That's why I got in this business. Business owners are my people, and that's who I want to serve. So like I'm all about sharing information and trying to be helpful. So by all means, reach out. You got any questions? We're going to be trying to do more things like this and share more information because we have realized how valuable it is and how a lot of people don't know some of these things.
Absolutely.
So we're going to do more deep dives on individual topics in the future too.
Amazing. Well, you are welcome back anytime, man. And I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to end this stream. But if you want to stay on for just 1 second, that's cool too.
Thanks.